Imagine a scene where a prototype Peugeot 405 races across the African desert, driven by rally leader Rooy. His car effortlessly cruises through the desert at around 200 kilometers per hour. This isn't surprising considering the Peugeot's power output of 400 horsepower with a weight of just 1,300 kilo. But suddenly, the 11-ton DAF truck catches up with the leading Peugeot, matches its pace, and starts overtaking it. In fact, these are real moments from the 1988 Paris-Dakar rally, and this scene has become a timeless classic of the Dakar rally. However, not everyone knows that this iconic moment was followed by tragedy, leading the DAF truck manufacturer to exit motorsport. Today's Dakar trucks are nowhere near the speeds achieved by Dutch DAF trucks in the late 80s. The reasons behind this change are explained in today's video. You often hear about how great it was back in the days when cars were designed by engineers rather than marketers and when sports were free from any restrictions. And maybe that's true, but we shouldn't forget that complete engineering freedom often leads to tragic consequences. This was the case with Group B rally cars, and it turned out the same way with the insane DAF Turbo-Twin truck. Trucks have been part of the Dakar rally since its first marathon in 1978 to 79, which followed the classic route from Paris to the capital of Senegal. Among the 12 trucks that started were some quite unusual vehicles, such as the Austrian military off-road vehicle Pinzgauer. The competition in those years was semi-professional, and the technical requirements were very open. In the first Dakar, there was no division into separate categories for trucks, cars, and motorcycles, but the majority of participants were motorcycle racers. This is not surprising, as the marathon's organizer, Thierry Sabine, was a motorcycle racer himself and came up with the Paris-Dakar after getting lost on his motorcycle in the Libyan desert. However, over time, cars and trucks increased their presence in the Dakar, surpassing motorcycles both in speed and in numbers. In 1981, a Dutch truck called the DAF, based on the 1800 series model, joined the Dakar rally. It sported the inscription Mighty Mac on its side, which could be seen as a good-natured Dutch joke, as there was nothing mighty about this model. Not only was it one of the smallest in its class, but it also had an engine with a mere 160 horsepower. Behind the wheel of the truck was Toine van Vliet. Unfortunately, the debut was overshadowed by an injury to co-driver Henk Thiessen, who broke his arm after an unsuccessful landing. This marked the end of the race for the Mighty Mac. The following year, two DAF trucks based on the 2800 model entered the race, now with a front engine layout. The trucks had somewhat peculiar proportions, a 310 horsepower engine, and most importantly, a nickname nose. Behind the wheel of one of them was Jan de Rooy, who brought the brand its first podium finish by placing third in his debut year. Since the late 1960s, de Rooy had a passion for rallycross and competed in these races with small displacement DAF cars. Specifically for de Rooy, DAF engineers built a mid-engine, all-wheel drive prototype called the DAF 555, with which Jan and his brother Harry dominated their competitors. Jan de Rooy was not a poor man. His family owned a business transporting equipment throughout Europe, using DAF trucks for these purposes. Therefore, it's not surprising that when de Rooy set his sights on conquering the Dakar behind the wheel of a truck, he simply couldn't debut driving a different brand's vehicle. But let's fast forward a couple of years after his debut and jump straight to the most interesting part. In 1984, a twin-engine DAF truck joined the Dakar rally with a combined power output of 700 horsepower. However, what made it stand out was not just its power, but also its unconventional design. Yes, this truck had two cabins and earned the nickname Two-Headed Monster. From this point on, the madness of DAF engineers couldn't be stopped. They abandoned the two-cabin design the following year to save weight, but they continued with the twin-engine layout, increasing power every year. In the end, the DAF Turbo-Twin truck with side-by-side engines generating 1,000 horsepower entered the start of the 1986 Paris-Dakar rally. If you still think Group B rally cars were the craziest technology of the 80s, then the Dakar DAF trucks have something to say about that. The second version of the Turbo-Twin finally allowed de Rooy to win the truck category of the Dakar in '87. The second place finisher, Tatra's pilot Carl Loprice, lost to Jan by 14.5 hours. It's also worth noting that de Rooy finished 11th place overall. By the following year, 1988, DAF had prepared two new versions of the Turbo-Twin, known as X1 and X2. Both were equipped with two diesel engines, each with 3 turbochargers, producing 600 horsepower each, totaling a whopping 1,200 horsepower for this hellish truck. Rumors suggested that the DAF could reach a top speed of 240 kilometers per hour. There was no doubt that with such firepower, the Dutch team would easily win the Dakar in the truck category, and moreover, with such a fast truck, they could easily contend for a high position in the overall race standings. The 1988 Dakar Rally was marked by several peculiar stories. For instance, during one of the overnight stops in Mali, the head of the Peugeot team, Jean Tott, received a very strange call claiming that Ari Vatanen's Peugeot 405 rally car had been kidnapped and could only be returned to the team for $25 million. This was possible because rally cars were parked at a local stadium during the overnight stops and were not heavily guarded. Jean Tott decided not to pay the ransom, but instead went on a search for the car. Eventually, the car was found abandoned a few kilometers from the abduction site. Despite a massive delay, Ari Vatanen managed to continue the race. However, under pressure from the president of the Motorsport Federation, Jean-Marie Balestre, he was ultimately disqualified. However, according to another plausible version, the entire kidnapping story was orchestrated by the Peugeot team itself, which secretly wanted to replace the engine in the rally car. As for the DAF team, during the prologue, both Jan de Rooy's and Theo van der Riet's trucks had the right front wheel dislodged from the disc. This was unusual, but it turned out that the right front wheel would become one of the catalysts for the upcoming tragedy. Apart from the tire incidents, initially the marathon went perfectly for the Dutch team. Jan de Rooy raced his DAF X1 towards another victory among the trucks, emitting clouds of black smoke. His truck couldn't maintain the pace of the lighter rally cars consistently, but on long desert straights it challenged the best. In the overall race standings, de Rooy held the 8th position, and on January 7th he set a record-breaking 6th time on a special stage, outpacing most of his car rivals. Unfortunately, this turned out to be DAF's last success. On the morning of January 8th, the X2 truck driven by Theo van der Riet started another special stage. The DAF was cruising through the desert at 170 kilometers per hour until it reached a section with small dunes. On the first 2 dunes, it took off and landed on all 4 wheels, but on the third one, the DAF suddenly flew with a slight tilt and crashed its right front wheel into the ground. After the impact, the truck somersaulted, completing 6 full rotations before coming to a stop on the sand. Accidents, even worse than this, have occurred in rally raids and classic rallies, and the crew has emerged unscathed. Of course, the DAF was equipped with a roll cage as per regulations, designed to protect lives in any impact. However, one utterly monstrous design decision ruined everything. The safety belts, to which all crew members were securely fastened, were not attached to the roll cage, but directly to the seats. Unfortunately, during the impact, this caused the seats to detach from their mounts. Driver Theo van der Riet and mechanic Chris Ross remained in the cabin and suffered severe injuries, while co-driver Kees van Luffenzane was ejected and killed instantly. Following this tragedy, DAF management immediately withdrew the remaining crew of Jan de Rooy from the race and announced their departure from motorsport. The Dakar organizers also banned the overly fast and dangerous T4 group trucks. DAF returned to the Dakar only many years later. In 2003, Jan de Rooy, along with his son, led the charge. However, it was a completely different era with different trucks. The speed of modern Dakar trucks is forcibly limited to 140 kilometers per hour. Most likely, without this limiter, they could easily match or even surpass the DAF Turbo-Twin. Modern trucks are not much weaker in terms of power, and their suspension has significantly advanced compared to the 80s. However, removing this limiter during competitions is not allowed today. But considering how the story of the insane DAF Turbo-Twin ended, perhaps it's for the best. If you liked this video, subscribe to the channel and comment on which car you would like to know more about.